Hey everybody, welcome back. Alright, so in this lesson we're going to do the melody of this track. Now we're going to be using some of the chord tools in Cubase and we're going to make a super basic melody which sort of goes throughout most of this track, or it certainly provides the musical foundation for this track. Now one thing I just want to cover here, because we're going to be making, like I say, a very simple progression using just simple triads with sort of minimal messing around with those chords and stuff. It's really important to note here that just because something isn't sort of complex, that it's like not good. There's nothing wrong with using simple triads in your track if it's effective and does its job as it's supposed to do. And that's one of the things about sort of pop music or sharp poppy music or whatever that you'll notice when you do listen to the sort of top tracks, is that they're actually really quite simple, or at least the parts that are in there, if you analyze them on an individual level, are really quite simple, or even minimal, I should say. The point is you can get a track which has very sort of minimal elements, if you like, but if those minimal elements are done well and they all work together and they're all providing something that gives that track a lift, then that song is not going to sound minimal. It's going to sound full and full of life and energetic, and it's going to get whatever message it is across that you're trying to get across. So, you know, for example, if you're trying to get across emotion and you've just got piano and a singer, that can work beautifully. Obviously with dance music, we've got a few more elements that we need to get in there. We've got drums, which need to be providing the sort of full-on rhythm of the track, the bass line, which is going to play with that rhythm as well and sort of overlay a more complex and pumpy kind of rhythm on top. And then on sort of top of that foundation, we've then got synths, which is kind of what we're going to be working on now, and then we got the vocals and stuff like that. So all of these elements are going to have their own individual part. Now we will talk more about that as we progress and why I've chosen certain elements and how they sort of all work together to create this sort of nice cohesive song. But I just want to point that out. It's just not always about creating the most complex, crazy sounds. Really, simplicity a lot of the time is paramount, or minimalism within your parts is actually really, really important. Okay, so let's get on with the melody. So in this case, we're just going to load up a Retrolog instrument. So I'm just right clicking and go add instrument. And Retrolog comes with Cubase Artist and Pro. If you're using Cubase Elements, you won't have Retrolog. So what you'll need to do is install a free instrument called the Tyrell N6. And I've put a video in the extra videos folder in the work files, and that will show you how to download and install the Tyrell N6. So go watch that if you need to, download and install it, and then come back and load up the Tyrell N6. Now in the next lesson, I'm going to show both users, Retrolog users and the Tyrell N6 users, how to create a lead sound using that synth. But for now, we're just going to use a stock sound. So again, just load up Retrolog or Tyrell N6, click add track. No matter what synth you're using, let's just close that. We're just going to use a stock sound just to get the melody right. I'm just going to move that down. And let's just go for Chord Pads, which is in the lower zone. So we cover Chord Pads in the beginner's tutorial, but if you're unfamiliar, all it does is give you pre-made chords. Now you'll notice, actually, sorry, just very quickly, for those using Retrolog, for some reason, in Cubase 11, they've changed the default patch to sine wave. I don't know why they've done that. So just very quickly, humour me and change this to a saw wave. Change them both to a saw wave. That's fine. That's all you need to do. The Tyrell, you don't need to worry about that. So as you can hear, you hit the chords or the pads and it plays a chord. So probably the easiest way to get started in Chord Pads is just to load a preset. So we can click on this Chord Pads presets button, load Chord Pads presets, and these are all of the Chord Pads presets that you get. We actually just want the C minor scale, so I'm going to click that and you'll see the pads update. And Cubase, as you play with these pads, you'll sort of notice the voicings, which is represented by these little white blocks down the bottom. They can change up and down. You can change the voicings by using these arrows here, but actually I find it incredibly annoying. I don't know why it's set like this, but anyway, you can just lock those pads by clicking the little down arrow and go lock all pads. And now when you're clicking around Chord Pads, it won't just suddenly update the voicings. Anyway, let's go to the Chord Assistant, which you can get to by clicking this button. So if you're in I can't remember if it's Cubase Artist and Pro or just Pro, you'll have the proximity window, which we're not going to use. We're just going to use the circular fifths, which is available in all versions. So with the circular fifths, the way it works is you've got your 1 chord in the middle. Same there, but it's labeled with a 1. And then you've got all the other chords as well. So you've got your 2 chord, which is the diminished chord, 3 chord, and so on. And one of the best ways to actually come up with a melody for your track is literally just to come in here and just jam around using the different keys. I know the sound at the moment on Retrolog is not perfect. That sort of grainy, in fact, let's just go into that very quickly. I'm just going to raise it up an octave by using the main octave control there. Now it's... Even if you've got no music theory knowledge, it's very, very easy to do. Now, I already know the progression that I want to use, so we're going to just actually drag this in. Now, the way you get chords into the project window is just to click and then just drag it in. There we go, we've got a C minor, that's the 1 chord. Then we're going to go to a 3 chord, which is an E flat. And then we're actually going to use a chord which is outside of the C minor scale, so don't worry too much if you don't understand what this means, but we're going to use an F chord. So the C minor scale does have an F minor chord, but we're actually going to use an F major chord. Now again, don't sort of panic too much, it's fine, it's just a very basic music theory thing of what you call a borrowing a chord. So, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a second, just to explain that a bit more, but that's fine. So those are our 3 chords, and let's just close that window, just turn this down a bit. Okay, so those are our 3 chords that we're going to use. We're going to obviously change this up. It's not just going to be quite so boring as just these 3 chords, but that's fine. So let's just select all of them because they all come out in sort of separate MIDI chunks. So I'm going to select all, select my glue tool, just get to the right-click toolbar by, funnily enough, right-clicking, and let's just extend that all the way to the end. Now let me very quickly explain to you what I meant about borrowing a chord. So in the C minor scale, we don't actually have the note A in there. It would normally be that we have a G sharp, so it would normally be like this. And that's how it would be in the C minor scale. This chord would be a minor chord. But in the C major scale, this chord, the F chord, would actually be a major chord. So all we've done basically is change that to a major chord. Now let me just play that on its own. So this is what a major chord sounds like. I'm just going to solo that for a sec. Sort of a happier sound. And then down it's sadder. So all we've done is make that a sort of happier chord. Now it just changes the feel of the chord progression, that's all. Rather than this. Okay, so that's all it is. Now don't worry, that if you're super new to music theory, you're probably not understanding everything about what I just said, but I definitely recommend checking out our music theory for EDM producers tutorial, because that takes you from everything from the very basics of literally how to pick a scale to work in, how to actually build simple triads like these, and then also how to take them much further and really sort of make some amazing sounding riffs, how to borrow chords, all that sort of stuff is covered in that tutorial. Right, so for now that's fine. Let's just build on this a little bit. I just want to expand this and sort of make it a little bit more interesting. So let's just shorten this a bit and copy these over. So my idea here is to sort of make it go dun, 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 and have it repeating. So it sounds a bit more funky than just this real super basic chord progression that we can see here. So let's make that happen. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to copy this across, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this up an octave. So this is actually officially changing the voicing. I mentioned voicing earlier. This is what voicing actually is. So you keep the same notes that you've got, but you just move them up or down an octave. So we're going to take this A and we're going to move it up an octave. You can do it by holding Shift and using the up arrow on your keyboard, or obviously you can just drag it up yourself as well. And although it's a sort of, you know, in a sense, a completely different note, it's the same note, it's A, it's just in a different octave. Let me just quickly play that. And then let's get this across, just sort of working this out as I go here. Shorten these, and then we're going to have this going down. So I want it to go do, 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 do. So this is do, 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 from here. So let's just basically going to go down to this chord here. So I'm just going to have them all selected and drag that down. So that is correct. Yep, D sharp, G and A. Great. And then the last one, we're going to go down to D. Now I just need to change this because F sharp is not, or G flat is not in the C minor scale, so that's going to have to go down. Just needs a little flick there, so let's have that in there as well. So one thing here, you'll notice the difference in color of the notes. So this is just the velocity that it's showing, and you can see that here. We've got the event colors is based on the velocity. Now the velocity, if you can't see this lower part here, this lower zone, you can show it by clicking the lower zone function there. And this is by default on velocity. And really it sort of refers to the strength with which the note on the keyboard is being hit. Now with the synth, you can choose to have this matter or not, but I'm just going to make sure that we've all got the same notes, the same velocity for all of the notes. So I'm just coming down and just changing that. So all you got to do, and you'll see the color update. So for example, if I wanted to sort of change all of these notes so they were being hit harder, I could just hit Control A on my keyboard to select all, and then in the lower zone here we can just scale that vertically, and you'll see that all the notes sort of update in color. Anyway, kind of unimportant for this, it's just a synthesizer, and we can turn the fact that it's being affected by the velocity on or off, so that's fine. It's just a note for later. All right, so that's that. Let's just turn that down a little bit more. Right, okay, so that sounds fine. Apart from the sound itself is god awful, but we're going to get to sorting that out in the next lesson. So that's it for this one. We've got the start of our musical structure. We will of course be adding different stuff using this as the basis for our melody of the track. But that's it for this lesson. Thank you very much for watching, guys and girls. I'll see you in the next one.